All right, folks. Well, welcome to this meeting of the Cemetery Board. I'm Dan Shapiro, Secretary of State Cesar Perales' designee as chair.
Christopher Wiles, representing the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman.
Bob Welch, Commissioner's designee for Dr. Naraf Shah, Commissioner of Department of Health.
Chet Butkowitz, Assistant Director, Division of Cemeteries.
Mike Silman, Senior Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Glenn Breen, Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Suzanne Joseph, Clerk, Division of Cemeteries.
Joe Ambrose, Associate Accountant, Division of Cemeteries.
Tony Melillo, Counsel to the Cemetery Board.
And we have Marcus Vigil. Marcos, say hello.
Hello. Deputy Secretary for Business Services and Supervision.
Nice to have you all here. All right. Have folks had an opportunity to review the minutes of the previous meeting?
Yes.
Any comments, suggestions, changes?
I did not have any.
Nor did I. So,
Wow.
yeah, that's amazing. Did you do them, Suzanne?
I had help.
Nice
Great
job,
stuff.
you all.
All right. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. By the way, I will note, is this the first Richardless meeting?
Yes. Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Oh, my God, it's going to go fast.
Hey.
Even when he's gone, I can't help it. You know, Richard, if you're watching. All right.
It's not even 100%.
That's right.
Well, it's not live, actually, but in recording.
True.
All right. Legislation and regulation, we actually have some stuff that we can discuss today, but Tony, go ahead.
Right. Well, no new legislation. The legislature hasn't gotten in gear yet. We have pending before us the draft of the financial reporting regs, which was circulated to the board last night.
All right. You know, before we entertain discussion on that, why don't you just go through, you know, the bare bones, what it does, why it does what it does, so that folks everywhere can understand what we're attempting to do.
Right. Well, one of the main reasons we wanted to update it is because the requirement for CPA audited reports was capturing more cemeteries than it should. There were cemeteries that met the financial levels of being a large cemetery, but weren't really large cemeteries and shouldn't have to be filing the audited reports.
Right. Under the current structure, we divide cemeteries into different classes
Right.
just for this purpose. And the reason being, the motivation for doing that way back when was because it is really expensive to engage a CPA, to have a CPA certified report.
Right.
And that was only an expense we thought that was appropriate to be borne by a large cemetery which had assets and investments worthy of such a report, right?
Right.
So that original rulemaking was done, and the original definitions for small, medium, and large
Yes.
was done, 15 years ago or something like that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Certainly before I showed.
Whenever it was, okay?
Right.
And times have changed, and what was small, medium, and large back then is no longer small, medium, and large,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so,
Right.
No, they're not as small, and they're larger.
yeah, or,
Right.
yeah, right.
So, in looking at how to improve that aspect of the financial reporting regs, we looked at other areas to make things more consistent. The division has always had its form that cemeteries could use, so we're getting the cemeteries to use that form. Because of the issues that we've had with the standalone crematories, we've added more specific provisions for how they should be reporting. So we really went through and addressed a variety of concerns in this proposed regulation.
All right. So you circulated the draft of the language. Folks have any comments on them? Any discussion with respect to the direction we're proposing?
I thought it was logical.
Yeah, I really, amazingly, I didn't have any real comments either. They look pretty sound, does what it needs to do. Why don't we do this then? For the next meeting, let's have a draft notice of proposal, all right? And once having that in front of us, complete with the appropriate SAPA documents, we'll take a look, and if there's no problem, maybe we'll be ready to vote on it and get the wheels turning.
Okay. Great.
Okay, good, wonderful.
Tom,
Oh, by
thanks.
the way, has this been circulated outside of the office?
No.
You know, I think it would be a good idea. All right, let folks know. So, the usual
begin doing that?
suspects.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And then you can entertain comments and help. All right, very good. Division report? Chet, what you got? Oh, wait, where stole your thunder, huh?
No, no, no. The only thing to report really is we seem to be running into more cemeteries investing in mortgages, and so what types of mortgages, and are these sound investments, that type of thing. So we're probably going to be looking at those a little bit closer. I know that investments are handled by, the EPTL, prudent investor
Right.
law, things of that nature. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, yada yada. But there's like a handful of occasions now where we have some serious concern about investments in mortgages, and so we'll be looking at that. But so just alerting, the board that might require maybe a policy consideration or something.
All right. Well, I guess the issue really will be whether the monies are prudently invested versus the DPTL. If in your audits you find that it isn't, or there's an issue with it, or if you find that it is appropriate under DPTL but nevertheless injurious to the cemetery, then we have something to discuss.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Good.
So,
All right. Thank you.
is there anything else? Because Richard did change it.
Huh?
Director's report to division report. So I'm just.
I said it'd be fast without Richard. Not necessarily for the best. Yeah, all right, well, Chet, we'll run right into the vandalism report then.
Okay. For the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014, we've collected vandalism fees of $30,832. We have applications granted of $380,354 and applications pending of $474,899.
Very good.
Okay, of those granted, 3 were for vandalism, 14 were for restoration, and 2 for abandonment.
Okay. Now we have 5 orders pending. I had a question on Ilion Cemetery, the very first, which was for the replacement of a stained glass window in a vault/chapel. And it's the old question, was that appropriate to replace? I know it's already been done, right? So I'll say, would it have been? Because in this circumstance, I can't fault the cemetery for doing it, but
That type of repair? Yes, my opinion, yes. It sits at the front of the cemetery, it's a big Gothic stone vault/chapel. It's the front entrance of the cemetery, and the window was actually in the back, but the chapel's kind of the focal point of the cemetery.
Right.
They've taken measures, they cut the tree down, there was a tree that accessed it, they cut that tree down. They put screen over it. There's 2 windows on the back of the vault, and all the windows in this building are the stained glass, but there are 2 windows side by side. So if you were to replace one that didn't look like the other one, it would stand out.
okay. All right, so, but it's the old issue as to what is appropriate in terms of our fiscal responsibility, to maintain the public fisc and true restoration of the damaged items, and whether or not it's appropriate to replace with original or something less expensive can be devised. In this case, I had a sense that
I might
it
have
would
tried to
be,
pursue that, but did you read the situation? They had the floods.
Yep.
And they had, right.
Yeah.
And they thought it was covered under insurance, and then it turned out. If it had come in and I had 2 estimates, I may have asked them to explore, plastic or something similar. But, anything other than a, simulated, it would stand out
Yeah.
because there's another window next to it.
Okay. Any other questions on that one?
No.
Okay, and then there was, I'm just trying to read my really bad handwriting. Oh, yes, Phelps Cemetery. It was mentioned in the report that they ran 2 ads, didn't run the third consecutive, hadn't gotten a response to the 2, ran the third later on after being informed, didn't get, they're pending a response, they're not gonna get one. I can't say I don't care, but I think it's all right. We're not gonna make them run 3 ads again, I can't imagine doing
Right.
that.
And
So,
something that's kind of in line with that is we've asked the cemeteries to contact us going forward, because we've had problems with the legal ads.
Yep.
We've had problems with the formats for the estimates. And so we're asking the cemeteries to contact us before they get the information together so we can make sure.
Oh, nice, good.
That they understand they need first, last name, lot number, and our wording once a week for 3 weeks in an acceptable bid format.
Okay, that's a good change. Hopefully we won't have those problems anymore. All right, any other comment, discussion on any of these?
I had none.
All right, want to do a motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, how many modified total returns have we ever had? I don't even recall one.
I think there were a couple.
What are they? I just don't, and they typically come to the board? Yeah,
I couldn't recall, actually, so
Our longtime
I-
board member shaking his head.
I couldn't recall.
Yeah,
So
I
I figured it should put it before the board.
Yeah, you know what? It's an opportunity because I have to tell you that statute is real difficult to pierce in terms of the calculations that have to be made. So why don't you give us a quick thumbnail and
And my apologies. My first
No, it's
memo,
fine.
the cover memo was weak and incorrect.
oh,
'Cause I have
well,
a
in that
type-
case, your apologies.
I have a typo in it, so
Okay.
I've redone it.
All right.
I was going to ship it out, but I figured, well, I'll just describe it. Basically, what the whole process does is create a floor and a ceiling, and it allows cemeteries to use the modified total return process to take as an appropriation some of the capital gains of the cemetery.
This is statutory.
This is statutory. So where permanent maintenance usually requires money's going in as principal, once its principal can't be touched without a court order, the modified total return allows the cemetery to actually take some of the capital gain that would normally be protected by law for maintenance and preservation of the cemetery. So it creates a floor and a ceiling. So the floor is based on a 3-year average of capital gains that the cemetery had in permanent maintenance, and so it creates a ceiling, a ceiling. So the 3-year average is then you take 60% of that, which is the $5,640, and the actual floor is comparing the adjusted historical dollar value, which is created by applying the consumer price index to the permanent maintenance, so that if you apply the CPI to the permanent maintenance principle, since the statute became law in 2002, it could only go up. So you can't take the appropriation that's going to reduce it below the adjusted
Right.
historical
So
dollar
that's the
value.
way to maintain the
Right.
integrity of the fund. In other words,
Correct.
not losing by virtue of taking capital gains and then.
Exactly.
All right.
So Chris is the modified total return extraordinaire calculator.
Okay.
So he provided the spreadsheet, and I just try to boil it down to a memo.
Right. So the total taking on this is how much?
The total take on this is $5,640.
And that's for what purpose?
For maintenance and preservation. Oh, no, sorry. It is for the purpose of refunding the permanent maintenance that was previously invaded by actually taking regular monthly installments via their investment.
Did they think they were using the modified total return? And
They're
they
using the
calculated-
modified total return.
And they calculated it
They-
incorrectly?
Yes, they did.
All right, so this is not a lot of money. And it's clearly not an intentional invasion of the permanent maintenance fund. It is a little sticky legally, I think.
Right.
But
They essentially took a loan without authorization out of the fund, but now they're paying it back.
Correct. Right.
This came up in an audit.
Yes.
yeah,
yes,
it's good that it
yes.
did.
Right. And they were very apologetic.
Yeah,
That
no,
was
no
unintended.
intentionality.
It was
Over the course of how many years did that happen?
that's not clear to me.
Okay. All right. What is there for the cemetery board to do on this?
That's an excellent question.
So the total we're talking about is $5,600?
56
And 40.
and $40.
$640. I mean,
The statute says the appropriation shall become effective 60 days after notice to the board unless the board within that period objects to the appropriation. So
Yeah,
if the board
that-
takes no action, it's approved.
that's for, so there's actually, I really don't remember if I done one of these. So that's, there's an application to the board
Yes,
to
they-
take a modified total return?
Yes,
Okay, and if the board does nothing
it's approved.
after 30 days or
After
whatever?
60
there's-
days.
After 60 days, and how many days have passed now?
The clock start.
I'd have to look to see when Chris's July 27th was their actual request.
No, I will take, well, what do you guys think?
I'd say
Let her ride,
we
baby.
we stay quiet.
Okay.
Is that a motion? That's a
I'm all in
motion.
favor of staying quiet. No motion, no second. Okay, that's fine.
Is that a first?
That's fine. We'll be quiet.
In acknowledgement of Richard's absence, I say we stay quiet.
Now we're piling on. I love this. All right, well, we have a land purchase, PM fund loan, development of cemetery property purchase, complicated issue before the board on Whitehaven Cemetery, and I see that Whitehaven is here. What I'd like to do is have the division first tell us a little bit about this, and then you can address the board.
Lakeview Cemetery is a part of Whitehaven Cemetery, and the big selling point on Lakeview is that there's a view of the lake, and there's property that could potentially obstruct the view. It's between the lake and the cemetery that's being sold now, and the cemetery would like to purchase 7.5 acres of this property. And they'd also like to purchase an easement on the dwelling, and I think it's 3+ acres, 3.4 acres, to stay with the house.
Right, that's the improved portion, yeah.
Yes, the improved portion, to keep them from, erecting anything that would obstruct the view, or putting in commercial, business or something like that would change the characteristics of the cemetery. So they've outlined that. There's some other things they'd like to do with the cemetery. They want to repurchase a big block of graves that they can reconfigure into a new format that sells for them at this area. They're going to want to build a proper office at the cemetery. And I believe that's put a road to the office. That's about it. They have an existing loan, and all of these things come into the second portion of this, which will be a PM loan.
Yeah, what's pending right now, what's pending before the division in terms of petitions?
Well, my understanding is that the cemetery wants to get the board's approval on this, so you can get a purchase contract. Is that correct?
Approval of the land purchase,
Approval of land purchase,
but of
yes.
course, that's tied into the PM loan.
And the major renovation for
And the major
the
renovation.
building and.
But it's tied in, but, yeah, some things are ripe and some things aren't. I think maybe because, I think maybe the way to handle this is to focus on the transaction of the moment, which is the land purchase, right? That's the thing that you want to move along right away, I
It's
imagine.
a three-part thing that all kind of has to move together.
Okay, well, all right, we'll continue to discuss it. All right, so keep going. Mike,
So,
anything else?
for the 7.5 acres, I just talked to Andrew about it, as far as, they have a different format that they sell these graves in, and it doesn't fit our 700 graves per acre. And so we're looking somewhere around 466 graves per acre in this format at $2,450 a grave, and that ends up to $8,562,250.
That's a lot different than I saw in the write-up, right? Because I think, there was no fiscal in the write-up.
That wasn't included in the write-up, that breakdown wasn't.
Yeah, we didn't have any fiscal, which is,
Right. And the reason for that
Difficult,
was
yeah.
the 7.5 acres isn't needed immediately, but it's gonna be needed in the future, so they're not gonna develop that, they put 20 years out on development of that.
all right. So, yeah, I didn't get that from the write-up. So 7.5 acres is land that would be ultimately used for burial.
Yes. As well as the land they're gonna the graves they're gonna repurchase.
Right, and what's the value of those?
It's $330 a grave for a total of $25,000. And then they're gonna reconfigure them, and they'll end up with 50 graves at $2,400. I don't have that figure.
And what is that, what kind of cemetery is that right now? Is it a family set, what is it?
No, it's a public not-for-profit.
Oh, it's a public
cemetery.
not-for-profit, okay.
I think it was started as a family slash, somebody had a nice area and they wanted to start a cemetery, and they did. And they ended up, did they abandon it, or how did they?
No, he'd been talking to us for years. He wanted us to take over the cemetery because he realized it was going to be very impractical for him to maintain it. As he was getting older, he really needed somebody to take over the responsibility for it. So, and he was a full not-for-profit cemetery corporation.
Okay.
And the
It
two,
started as a not-for-profit.
the two cemeteries merged, and Whitehaven was the surviving corporation. So we absorbed that entity, we paid nothing for it, and got the complete asset transfer in our books.
So Lakeview was cemetery index number 35440, is no longer. It is now part of Whitehaven.
Right, but what's the parcel that's being purchased with the graves?
That was owned by the person who.
But still owned by them?
Yes.
He still owned 76 graves.
Okay, now I understand.
And you had a
That's a very
All right,
popular
all right.
section with a big monument there, and
Okay.
that's all.
Got it, all right.
So
Understand
Mike,
the graves.
say in what's, and they're purchasing 7.5 of the 11, what's going on with the other 3.5?
There's a house there, there's a dwelling there, and that's parceled off 3.4 acres. And originally, the thought was to purchase the whole thing.
Yeah.
Divide off what they could use for development for cemetery purposes, and then resell the remaining, but then with the covenant. But they were able to come up with this idea that maybe they could, rather than purchasing it just to resell it, which we don't know if they would be able to, and if it would make sense to just purchase the covenant or purchase the deed restriction on the existing dwelling. And that's the $30,000.
Right, which is
Okay.
significantly cheaper. The acreage, the 7.5 acres is only, at least we think it's only $60,000, and $30,000 for the covenants, which should run with the land and all that good stuff, which we'll talk about later. The purchase price, the residence, the entire property would have cost 500 something, that was the appraisal?
Yeah, it was high. And then
Yeah.
you also have your closing costs and all of those things, and then you'd have to
Yeah, so.
dispose of it.
So assuming that you really can lock up the development of that land, it makes a lot of sense. Unless you didn't want that house there at all, unless you wanted a contiguous, uninterrupted area. All right, so, is there anything else that should be added to this discussion before I get to the?
Just a brief overview.
Yeah.
These things really all just kind of happened at one time, so that's why we're bundling them all together. The seller came to us and with what we think is something akin to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to secure this land. From the cemetery, our view is down the hill toward the lake. And at the bottom of the cemetery is a row of trees that is not on our property. It's on this property in question. And so even depending on how those trees are allowed to grow and, you know, what's planted there could obstruct our view. So in the first order of business, to control that hedgerow would be critical. Then slightly further down the road is this existing house, which is a one-story ranch. So within the cemetery, you look right over the top of it at that height. But if somebody suddenly came in, if a developer bought that land, they might come in and where they would want to put residences, which they might put a 2 or 3 story townhouses, at the highest point of that land to have the best view of the lake, it would pop right up into our view and devalue the cemetery property that's there. So I've always thought of it in terms of the view, but before he talked to me, he was thinking about selling it to a Christian camp on the other side of the ravine from us. They were going to use that land for athletic fields. So depending on who buys it and what they use, I mean, you might have a noise issue, just a disturbance of the peace. So yeah, I think there's just so many good reasons of so many things that could go in there that would be not appropriate to have next door and downhill from the cemetery, that we looked at this as we really got to find a way to do this. Initially, the seller did not want to break it into pieces. He wanted us to buy the whole thing. But and after investigating it and after talking to the auditors, we decided that the best thing was not to do that. With their help, convinced him to go ahead and sell that house himself. But we did negotiate the $30,000 price with him to put the deed restrictions on it. Those restrictions are no modifications of structures or new structures to be higher than any existing structures. So that one story has to remain, and no non-residential development.
So this is just going to be a house sale?
Yes.
Okay.
He's going to sell the house. It's already listed for sale. The town quorum has already approved the subdivision of the land. So he's cleared. As soon as we close, he can close if he has a buyer that soon, because the subdivision of the land will go right through, and he'll sell the 3.5 roughly acres of land with the house, and we'll purchase the other 7, which will be annexed to the existing cemetery and redeeded into one big deed. So the total cemetery will be close to 14 acres then. And I look at this, and then it just happened at the same time that the founder of the cemetery, Joe Callahan, contacted me saying, you know, he just hadn't been back to the area in so long that he had decided that it was inappropriate for his family's graves to be there. Nobody was in the area to visit. His family spread out all over. And so we were able to negotiate a price with him that we thought was quite attractive at $333 a piece for those graves, which are the prime graves in the cemetery. Our lowest selling price right now down the hill is $750 a grave.
Right.
Most of our graves are $21.50, and those at the top of the hill will be $24.50 at the very least if we were going to sell them tomorrow. But our intent is to hold them back for a while.
And that purchase, the only reason you're before us on that is because you're seeking a permanent maintenance loan to finance it. Otherwise, you could just do it. You don't need our approval on anything.
Exactly.
Right.
But what we looked at when we put all these opportunities together, and I said, you know, here we acquired this cemetery really at no cost. You know, we took on, you know, all of their assets and I might add a 40-year amortization schedule, which I think also helps substantiate that we're asking for a 20-year payback on this loan, because this is like an initial purchase of a cemetery. We don't need this land. We've sold like 150 graves out of 3,000.
Yeah, that was going to be
in
a
the
question
top
of mine.
part of it. It's a small little rural cemetery.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not.
So
It's
you're really-
not like Whitehaven. We're not.
Yeah.
It's
We're
not
not
selling
gonna-
1,000 units a year.
Yeah, we're not going to see a return on investment in terms, you're not gonna see $7 million of sales.
No.
Not for a long, long,
No.
long time.
We had no intention of developing
Right.
it down there. There's no reason to yet. All we want to do is buy this while the opportunity is here, lock up that view, lock up that quiet ambiance that's down there, and sit on it. And then I got to thinking if we could possibly, as long as we're doing a PM loan, get some money to pay off our existing loan in the office that's there, then we would have the money to put up a maintenance building, which we really need down there. The guys, all they have is a wheelbarrow,
Right.
pushing it up and down that hill to move dirt. It's not good.
So let me ask you about the finances, because we don't have much in the package about that. So what's the total cost of this endeavor? Let's exclude from the discussion for the moment the maintenance shed.
Okay.
All right. What's the cost of this purchase?
We've got $90,000 is the purchase of the land.
Right.
$25,000 would be the purchase of the 76 graves from Callahan, if you want to include that.
Okay.
And also, we've put in there $42,500, which would be used to pay off the existing loan on the existing office.
And the loan's a bank loan.
The bank loan, what would be paying off is $42,500. It started out at 50-something.
And what I'd like to know is why do you have to go to the PM fund? What's the state of your general fund? The general fund through.
Yeah, we're around $250,000 in the general fund right now, and the PM fund is 6.5, almost 6.6, I think, million. Now we're current on all of the other loans that we have out of the permanent maintenance fund, and they've been coming down over the years, as have our bank loans. This would enable us, the current payment on the loan, that's the balance now is $42,500 with the bank. That's an interest-bearing loan. That payment is $856 a month. And if we borrowed the $197,500 over 20 years from the PM fund at no interest, the monthly payment would actually come in just a little bit less than that.
Yeah,
They would wash, and we'd get to accomplish all this with really no new cost.
I'll have the division. The division has got to give us an.
Yeah, my apologies.
But the general philosophical issue is that, for the 20-year period, the cemetery for the present is doing better. But what happens is when you get an interest-free loan from the PM fund doesn't grow to the extent that it would have grown by virtue of having that money in it. So that's what we always ask the division. Give us the fiscal, let us know whether this is good for the cemetery or not, whether it's good for the maintenance of the cemetery in perpetuity or not, all that good stuff. So,
And we were just audited by Sam Sharia, so
Right.
I thought he would have put something in or enclosed his report, but he said that the cemetery was in very good financial condition.
right. So, has the division gone over the details of this? Can they provide us with numbers and an opinion?
We could certainly do that. I mean, again, as Andrew just said, Sam had just audited them. I don't see any objection, and the memo is from Sam and Cindy, and they have no objection to the PM loan. I think it was their intent that the joint memo was going to cover the concern of the PM loan and.
Can I see the memo? I didn't see that in the packet. Did you include that in the packet? Chet, was that in there? I may have just missed it.
Yeah.
Yep, I think I missed it. Yeah, this isn't really it. It's not official. I don't have information here. All right, but I have some other questions too. So before we get to that,
If I may,
yeah.
just one other thing I'd like to point out. I think most of the cemeteries that you may find yourself dealing with are relatively close to build out, sell out, and we are far, far from it.
Right.
Both at Whitehaven and at Lakeview. we're looking at a horizon of like 1 to 200 years.
Right.
So the PM fund has a long, long, long time to grow and to build before we're depending on it as our sole source of income.
Okay. All right. So, let me ask Tony. We've got a lot of moving pieces to this. I'm just trying to organize it, all right? Because a lot of things are contingent on other things. You know, I'm thinking, we do have an application for the purchase of land before us.
Right.
Full application. What else is
Well, even
before
that
us?
application, well, we'll start with the purchase. The land purchase application is almost complete. They only have one appraisal for the lot without the house. The other two appraisals included the house. So
They
we're doing,
also do have site value on them.
I'm sorry?
They also do show site value and the assessed value. We've got that in a couple of places. The land itself is assessed at 74.9, and the Sperano appraisal has a site value in it of 74.9.
I don't know what you mean by a
Yeah,
site.
what does that mean?
That is the value of the total site. Now, obviously, some of that's going to go with the house, and that's why we're only paying $60,000. But
So if it was an unimproved lot, you mean, that he estimated at 75?
yes.
Okay, I got you.
So in talking with Cindy and Sam, that's why they said, well, it made sense to them
I see.
that we had other substantiating factors.
Right.
And we had already spent quite a lot of money with all these appraisals and with the phase 1 environmental that we had done on the house and so forth. And so we were
Okay.
trying not to spend a lot more money to get to the
Yep.
number we needed.
All right, so as far as the land purchase, that was the only issue I saw as far as having a complete packet.
Okay.
You don't really have an application before us for the improvements that you plan. Major renovation, there's no major renovation application. The purchase of the graves doesn't need our approval, just the loan aspect of it does. So what else is there?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly, I mean, the part about the maintenance building, that's not gonna happen
I think we
until at
have-
least next summer,
I
so
think we need to
can
defer that.
take that.
Yeah, I don't, yeah,
Doesn't
that's,
matter if
yeah,
that's
I
part
think
of
we should
this
take that
or
off the table, only because it's, at this point, it's just not close enough.
Far enough in the
Yeah,
future
yeah,
that
yeah,
it's
and I think
not.
it's confusing the issue rather than helping it. I think we understand that you would like to improve the property with that, that's fine, that's your plans for the property. You made it clear that this ain't gonna be burial ground for a long, long time. It's for the preservation of the view, the environmental, viability of the cemetery. I think we got that.
So as far as the PM fund loan application, I think the only parts that really are currently before the board then are the land purchase, the easement, the purchase of the graves, and the payoff of the loan. And that's a total of
Probably 157.5.
157.5.
Now, okay. If we were to tell you, gee, we don't have enough information to deal with the PM loan right now, but we really like the land purchase, fine. Is that something that you could commit to without our approval of the PM loan? In other words,
I really need
you
to-
can't do that out of your general fund because you only have 200 something
Right.
thousand, you said?
Yes, and also the whole thing doesn't work unless I have the money to pay off the bank loan too.
Okay.
So
Is that in the
really need the
157,
money to
the bank loan,
cover
the-
the bank loan, the Callahan purchase, and the land purchase to do it all together. So what we really need is the PM loan for 157.5 and do those three things.
Let me try this. Before we discuss the PM loan, why don't we talk about the viability of recommending approval of the land purchase or not, and the purchase of the graves?
Just a question, has the seller given you a deadline for a decision?
Yes, he has to close on the condo that he's buying on November 1st, so we would have to close before November 1st.
And there are other competing buyers at this point, or is he?
Well, the 3.5 acres on the house is currently listed for sale, so all he could do is up the price and up the amount of acreage and sell the whole thing out from under me.
Okay. So what do we think about the purchase of the lakefront view property?
Makes sense.
Okay? And what do we think about the purchase of the graves?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I figured that. So there's no philosophical objection to those two pieces. The only issue for me is the permanent maintenance loan and the payments back, the kind of stuff that we work out with the full fiscal and the full knowledge and approval, if you will, division. So division, I mean, have you looked at this, or is this just coming from Sam's
Well,
memo?
it's mostly coming from Sam's memo with Cindy, but again, he had just audited them, and I don't have the audit report in front of me. As Andrew was saying, there's some, they say $6 million plus in the permanent maintenance account.
And you're looking to move 197 plus?
It's
Well,
actually
it's reduced.
157.
We came to 157 now after we take out the 40 for
Okay.
the,
And you were contemplating a 20-year payback?
yes.
I think we had, as a matter of light policy at one point, started requiring quicker turnaround and paybacks. You recall that?
Yeah, that was primarily for mausoleums.
Mazza?
Because
That's
we
right.
had an instance of a payback being 12 years or 15 years, and the Mazda was sold out in 8.
Mhm.
So they came in for another PM loan to build another mausoleum, and we said, well, wait a minute, how does that work? And so
What is the PM loan growing at? PM loan? What's the PM account growing at right now? What's its rate of growth? Ballpark.
10%.
8-10%. All right.
we have seen some great comeback from the recovery from the most recent recession.
Okay.
That explains part of the modified total return we discussed briefly earlier too.
All right. So, we're in accord. We're in accord on recommending approval philosophically of these things. And I have no problem with the PM loan, really. The issue is, I want the division to look at this.
Yes.
And I want the division to also be comfortable with the payback and the
Yes.
health of the cemetery. Perhaps the best way to handle this, in light of the need for speed, is to do a conditional approval.
Yep.
Contingent upon the division's supplying to us, all right, council, of a complete fiscal workup with a recommendation that's acceptable to the division and acceptable to council on behalf of the board, if you will. I'd be comfortable with that. Does that sound all right?
I have no problem with that.
What was the audit that was just done?
3-year audit through 2012.
The cemeteries are ordered on a cyclical basis. Anyway,
All right, but what are you going to do in addition to that then?
we're going to review the permanent maintenance account, see what impact withdrawal of $157,500 will have on it, on its rate of return, and what. Just look at the whole thing, what the rate of return is on the PM fund as a whole,
You're running $6
And the
million
cemetery's
plus
ability
now?
to repay.
and then the cemetery's ability to pay, right?
Right, so you're looking at 3% of the PM.
Yeah, if they're making, let's say, just for discussion's sake, it really isn't a lot of money. But they're making 10%. All right, so at 150,000, it's
Looking at-
15 grand, right?
They're looking to
15.
use 3%.
They're what?
They're looking to use 3%.
Of the PM fund,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But they're losing out. They're losing out on profit, if you will. To the fund of 10% a year, right? So 15,000 a year. That's. I mean, to me, that's the cost to the PM fund. It's the principal is going to be paid back,
Correct.
right? But what would have been accrued is not. Of course, a lot of that is problematic because who knows what happens 2 years from now.
I think it's
Respective.
2%.
2%? Oh, of the
Is that what
total?
did you just do that?
3.
Is that what you got?
Yeah.
2%.
2% of the PM.
Yeah. Yeah. Have we ever required, Chet, folks to pay back the fund with, interest, if you will,
I think we did discuss that.
But we rejected it at the
I think the
time.
response was, if they were borrowing PM fund money for a mausoleum, the response was, we're going to make so much more money for maintenance and preservation of the cemetery when we start selling these crypts and niches and things of that nature. So it might be penny wise, pound foolish to restrict the PM loan if the cemetery is using the loan for purposes that are going to generate future revenues, greater quantity, I guess, or greater amounts, if you will. Some cemeteries have actually, come in for a PM loan and then say, look, we have a PM loan approved by the Supreme Court, and then not withdrawn money. They went to the bank and said, will you lend us this amount of money? Because should we have a default on a payment, we go to the PM loan and pay the bank off. But that's if it's in their favor. Because they didn't want to, their investments at the time were generating a greater rate of return than
the interest cost for the
right,
bank?
Right, exactly.
Well, that's sort of why I want the division to review it.
So, but that's what we'll do. We'll do that, and then.
But this situation is a little different than a mausoleum.
It is,
They're not gonna-
because they're not making any money.
Right.
So the PM loan is, and we approved plenty of PM loans without any interest requirement. I want to say that up front. It's just that
Sure.
it seems pretty obvious here as to what the issue is.
And we're also paying off a bank loan that is a cost to the cemetery, so.
Right.
Instead of paying the bank, we'll be paying ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a plus.
It's much better than paying the bank. The bank gets enough money as it is. Like to keep it.
What's that interest rate on that bank loan?
It's a variable. It's right now 4. So 4 point.
What assets did you get when you bought Whitehaven?
When we bought Lakeview, or when we merged with Lakeview, $209,000 was the cost of land and development.
And did you get permanent maintenance fund in that?
Very little. They had maybe $10,000 in their permanent maintenance fund. Pretty tiny little brand new cemetery.
So what's our benchmark for permanent care of the cemetery in terms of the permanent maintenance fund? What do we think, because we have our acreage calculation on the waters, what do we think the cemetery needs in its permanent maintenance fund to fully care for it?
I just. Off the top of my head, I'm not even sure. If I had the ability just to sign onto the mainframe and just print a page out of it.
That's part of the fiscal. That's what I think we need that. All right. So.
We've got 70 acres that's all just forest.
Right. Understood. Okay. Would folks be more comfortable having the fiscal analysis circulated to the board, having the board individually provide their approval or not approval to Tony? Or are we comfortable with having the division do the fiscal workup, submitting it to Tony, and having him take a look, make sure everything's on the up and up?
I'm okay with that scenario. I just
Okay.
think time could be a issue.
Yeah, that's why conditional approval, these guys can work quickly. If there's an issue, you'll bring it up to the cemetery and to the board.
Right.
All right, and we'll revisit if we have to.
I believe Cindy and Sam both gave their verbal approval to me. I assume they did to you too, Chad.
They had no objection to all that was reviewed and discussed. So.
Yeah, but I
should have
really need.
paid a little more attention
yeah,
to the fiscal write-up.
We need to know.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
And the issue, I tell you, the issue at it, which I'm really sort of leaving behind, but the issue about interest, I think we have to come to grips with, perhaps on a different application, because it is an issue.
Which is your dam?
The issue that when you take a loan from the PM fund, you're not paying back, yeah, that's right, you're not paying back what might have accrued to the PM fund, and depending, that could be fine if the cemetery's overfunded. I mean, all right,
Right.
so then it's great. It's like a little piggy bank, okay, I understand.
Right.
The cemetery's underfunded, that's a real problem, all right? And there are things that cemeteries need, there's no question, and that's the place to
Right.
go. But if you imperil the future of the cemetery for the present, that's something that has to be
Right.
weighed and discussed.
Right. Well, I have a question. How many acres are actually developed and sold?
At Whitehaven?
Yeah.
Whitehaven, we're about half developed. We got,
It's got 35 acres, half developed, sold.
no, we've got about 70 developed and another 75 undeveloped.
Okay. So,
Actually, it's more like 80 and 80.
I mean, and there's over $6 million.
What's the amount you have in your general fund?
Our general fund, 250.
It is, okay.
Could you do that?
I suppose. I mean,
Yeah.
I just asked a question, because I'm just asking a question of, if you've got $250,000 in your general fund, could you not use the money out of that now, and then subsequent to the additional financial
We get down
analysis?
much lower than that, it's too close.
Okay. What I'm saying is then, if this financial analysis comes back sound, replenish the general fund from the monies you would have used in the.
Unless it's a guarantee of where that money's coming from. I don't want to
Okay.
put the cemetery that close to the edge with winter coming.
Yeah.
You know, our cash
You're
flow
gonna know
is
very
great all
quickly.
summer, but winter,
Yeah.
not so much.
You're gonna know very quickly.
The other thing too
It's
is,
not gonna be a
I'm just
long-
thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, is it about, it's about
If you're comfortable,
$100,000
yeah.
per acre that you have that are developed? You
Well-
figure 70 acres that are developed,
Yeah,
and you got, say, over $6 million?
yeah,
Is that $100,000 per acre?
yeah.
That's well above what we would consider,
Good.
a healthy cemetery.
That makes me feel much better.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just looking at it, I'm thinking of math. I mean,
Right.
because we'd like to see cemeteries have, no less than $20,000 per acre, or even $30,000, because given the rate of return that they would get at a bank is almost nil, if they're relying upon interest,
Right.
But $100,000 per acre is very strong.
Okay, good. That's,
Whitehaven is critical too.
yeah.
So that's,
All right, so this should not be difficult for you
Right.
to do and for us to move on. All right, so I guess I'll do this, since I have a motion on the table, I have my language on the table, I might as well motion. Anybody want a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Okay, so, Chet will be in touch with you shortly, all right? If there's an issue, I'm sure I'll get a call.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right.
And if everything was good, Tony, you're just.
Tony's to sign off on that.
Okay.
All right. That concludes the public agenda, but for the opportunity for folks to address the board, and I would welcome any comments or criticisms, plaudits, if anybody would like to address us.
I'm fine.
I will.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
We can
I mean, look,
count on you, David.
Dave, without Richard here, somebody's got to,
That's right.
continue to be
I don't wanna
valuable.
keep you from your other
Right.
assignments, but Dave Cummings from New York State Association of Cemeteries. A few quick things. First, thanks to the division and the board for working on the regulation. I'm saying thanks in advance of actually seeing it, but this is an issue, as you know, because you've been at the meetings with the association, that continually comes up that a lot of these cemeteries are having very difficult times. These CPA audits are financially devastating to them.
Yep.
And we appreciate the division's willingness to look at that. We look forward to seeing those regs at the time. Also, I would just ask if maybe we could get the language that you're talking about on the publications requirement, so that maybe we can put it on our website and
That'd be
have
great.
Information available to help.
Yeah, we
I know
had-
we had it previously, but
Well, no, we just had a presentation by Jeff Reed of Mount Calvary Cemetery at our latest conference, and he had all the stuff.
if I can get it from
Yeah,
the
no, I-
division,
yeah.
that would be very.
Be happy to supply whatever we have.
It'll just make, I think it'll make it easier for everybody if we can give that to folks in advance, so that they're cutting down on staff time for you.
Chet, can you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
When we say publication requirement, we're referring to the applications for vandalism.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
language for the lot and the
Dangerous
name.
conditions.
Right.
Yeah. I think, didn't we put that in the newsletter on occasion, haven't we?
We did, but what we've done was taken, if you look at the applications that come in from Western New York with Cindy within the
Uh-huh.
spreadsheet,
Yeah.
we want that to be everywhere.
Okay,
And
that's a great thing. Let's provide that
It
so.
just seems
can
like
be-
it's evolved a little bit, so if we could have what's really out there now, that might be helpful. Cut
Yeah.
down some work for you folks and for our.
Yeah, it's great.
And finally, I've just been asked on behalf of the association, we just came from our annual conference in Cooperstown, where the cremation certification course was discussed. And a number of members had expressed concern that they had received notices from CANA saying that they were not, that they were refunding the money for their cremation certification class at the last minute, and that another entity had been approved to provide the classes. And we don't have a lot of information. We're continuing to review it at the moment, but I'm bringing it to the board's attention. The organization that we're told that's been approved and the October date has been set is the National Funeral Directors Association. And would just like to point out that the board's regs 204.3 for approved entities for these certification classes indicates that no organization seeking approval as a cremation certification course provider shall be affiliated or associated with, owned or operated or controlled by a funeral entity. And just as a cursory review at the National Funeral Directors Association, it indicates that membership is open to firms who own one or more funeral homes, and as well as licensed funeral directors or embalmers. And so obviously that seems to be a significant concern for the association that's in conflict with the regulation as it
Yeah,
stands.
we'll review that, because I don't know about the application of that reg to a national organization. I don't even know if does CANA have funeral directors? You know,
Yeah, but anybody can be a member.
Nobody
other
can be a
than
member of
funeral
this?
directors can be a member of NFDA.
we'll review that. Also, CANA certainly, any potential course provider can be approved to do a course if they meet the requirements set forth in the reg. So that it would be great for cemeterians if you had 100 folks giving classes. You'd have universal access all year. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Of course, there's a matter of fiscal reality for the providers. They need to get folks, and there's a limited population that will take advantage of the courses. But I do want it understood that anybody who meets the regs can provide the coursework. But we'll certainly review that, Dave. And if CANA would like to chat with us about its application, we'd be happy to entertain that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tony, or is that something you have to take a look at?
It's an issue that's just been brought to my attention, so I do need to look at. One thing I do know is the individual who's doing the course, that would be doing the course through the Funeral Directors Association, is the same individual who was doing it through CANA in the past years. So that hasn't changed, if that is what's happened. But like I said, I've just learned about this issue.
All right. Well, I think we have to do it pretty quickly. Take a look, and that's what we'll do. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All righty then. Tell you what time's anybody? I haven't got a watch on. 11:30. Do we want to rock and roll and go right into executive session? Or you want a 5-minute break? I leave it to you guys.
We can rock and roll.
All right, we're going to rock and roll, folks. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a technical term, by the way. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Term of art.
On behalf of Randy, I just want to make sure that when those regulations get circulated, he gets those as well, or me, whichever.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Leave it on. Leave it on. Wait.
The mute was on, so.
Oh, you're taking the mute off?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make that motion on the record.
And then
Yep.
put the mute back.
Okay, I'm motioning to go into executive session for investigative and litigative matters.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Okay, mute off, all right. Well, having nothing in terms of resolutions, motions from executive session, I will simply motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. See you next month. Third Thursday so
Third
far?
Thursday. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, yes.